Hi everyone, Christine Harrington here with Simon White from the UK, and today we're going to jump right in and talking about closing the sale, which we all know that's an important subject, isn't it, Simon?
It absolutely is. If you can't close, well, you're not going to get any new clients. You're not going to sell any products or services. So good to be here as always, Christine.
Yeah, if you can't close, you're broke. So,
That's it.
that's why it's so important. But I'm going to start out with a story I want to tell you, Simon, that happened about a year ago. Okay. And this is
Yeah.
the perfect story to tell about what not to do when trying to close the sale, right?
Yeah.
So I was prospected by a company to do an analysis of my business. And I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to give them any free advertisement. They don't deserve it. But the sales rep contacted me, and I was curious from the standpoint, I've been thinking about this, but I haven't really pursued it. And then I also was curious on their sales process, how they were going to take me through it. So the initial conversation I thought went really well, and the sales rep explained he was going to hand me off to the team, and the team would do some analysis on my business and then send me a report. So I agreed to that. The first report analysis went really well. They handed me off to another team to do another report analysis, and I had the second report within 48 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
So I looked at both of these reports, and I was curious. I'll be honest, I was curious. And so then I thought, okay, what are they going to do next? Nothing. Crickets. Nothing. No follow-up. No, the reports were sent. The sales rep will get back to you to set an appointment to review. Nothing, Simon. No follow-up at all. 2 months go by. 2 months. And the sales rep reaches out to me and says, in an email, not a phone call, Simon, in an email, he reaches out and says, I see that you were delivered the report. Let me know if you have any questions. Now, sales professionals out there watching this is such a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Don't ever say, let me know if you have any questions. It is not the buyer's responsibility to get back to you. It's your responsibility as a sales rep to follow up with them.
Yeah.
And that's what sets salespeople apart from sales professionals. And of course, I never responded at this point. Simon, I was thinking, I forgot about this like 3 weeks ago. But from a buyer's mindset, I thought about, is this a need or want for me? At the time I got the reports, that need was high. It was like 6 or 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. And had someone reached out to me and talked to me about those reports, they probably would have closed the deal. But as the time ticked, it became less and less of a need. And now 2 months later, I went, that's just really a want by now. I've survived without it. So what's your take on that?
Well, firstly, the fortune is in the follow-up. We all have won deals just because of the way we follow up on prospects. Personally, I think we've spoken about before, I will always say to the prospect, I will always agree with them when the follow-up's going to take place. I will phone you on Tuesday at 2 o'clock and send a calendar invite. I will never say, I'll never say this to my clients to do either, never say, call me if you've got any questions, or call you next week. Get it in a diary, get it agreed, and that's the mutual respect to do that. In that scenario that you've painted there with your story, that could have been an issue with just bad CRM. You know, they're not putting the date in the CRM. They're not keeping it up to date, which is another massive problem with salespeople getting lazy, not using the CRM properly. And every deal, of course, has its own momentum. And you had an interest at that point, and over time, sometimes hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, that interest will slide off, as yours did. If they'd have hit you with that report, followed up that day or the next day to walk you through it, because that's the first time you've seen that style of report, perhaps, and they could have walked you through it and said, look, what most people ask us to do is walk them through the report. Would that make sense for you? That kind of thing. You'd at least had the conversation. You might have decided not to do it, but at least they've done everything they could be doing. But certainly for me, a couple of phrases there that I use a lot is what most people want. You know, people like to follow the crowd. What most people do, is a great line. And also, does that make sense? You know, just as a little trial close, does that make sense? Yes, it does. Or no, it doesn't. If it doesn't, why doesn't it? You know, just understand it a little bit more. But great story to highlight so many things, really. That one story, so many problems potentially on that one. Yeah.
What do you think their closing ratio is with that kind of a sales process?
Bad. Well, it's bad for most companies. The closing rate isn't great.
Right.
Certainly, in sales in the UK, if you say to a salesperson, "What is your closing rate?" their knee-jerk reaction would be, "Oh, 1 in every 3." That tends to be a kind of loose thing. And reality is, it's probably more 1 in every 5 or 6. It depends on what they enter into the CRM when they start measuring it and whatever. But if that's how that company does business all the time, then they're not salespeople. They're just order takers. And, that could be a 1 in 20. Depends on how, depends on how qualified you were at the beginning of the process. Because for me, this really is a second part of our first part video, which was on qualifying. Most business owners think that or sales heads of sales think that their sales team can't close. They may not be able to close, but unless you can qualify properly, does that prospect have a need? Do they want that? Do they have a problem? Do they want that problem fixing? Can they afford to pay me, etc.? Unless you've really understood the qualifying part, you're never going to close. Two people put too much emphasis on the closing, and it's actually the opening where the problem was.
I totally agree with that, because even that old worn out saying, ABC, always be closing,
Yes.
You are always closing throughout the selling process.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's, if you're not, then those surprises come up when all of a sudden they've gone ghost on you and you can't get a hold of them, because first you haven't properly followed up and set the appointments to move them down the selling process. And second, you didn't ask those affirming questions all through the selling process as well. Simon, so what do you think about ABC of selling?
Yeah, I mean, it's popularised in the film Glenn Ross, and
Right.
And Alec Baldwin writes it on the board. Always be closing, and as you rightly say, it'd be closing on the next step in the process. So from first conversation, maybe to a demo, from demo to whatever those steps are. But I saw on LinkedIn recently a really good an alternative to the ABC, and it was assume nothing, believe no one, confirm everything. Which I think
I like that.
Oh, I just love that, and I've actually written it on my wall. I just thought that will stick, because that's a good rule for salespeople to stick by.
Say it again.
Assume nothing, believe no one, confirm everything.
I love that, because I know we may have talked about this in mistakes that salespeople make. Assumptions is a big mistake that salespeople make, even in closing, because they may assume too soon that it's time to close when it's not.
Yes.
Do you have any examples around that? Simon?
Well, the end of the month, when
Right.
The end of the quarter, when your sales manager says, right, what can you close this month? It's the last day of the month or the next day or whatever, and that's the problem. You can't rush it. And actually, when we were talking on our objections video, when we rush the sale, the prospect puts their hands up and starts hitting you with objections. So we can't rush it. Every sale has its own momentum, and yes, we can help the prospect understand the urgency of solving their problem by pointing out how much money that their current situation is losing them, costing them, etc. But it still has its own momentum, and we can't close too early. So I think it's important to test close throughout the process, to trial close by saying things like, is this what you're hoping to see today? Does this make sense? Those kind of things. But when it's right, you'll know it's right. And it's a bit like asking somebody to marry you. You only really ask them to marry you if you're really certain the answer is going to be yes. If you thought, I've got about a 20% chance, then you're not going to do it. Equally, you're not going to propose probably after a few weeks of dating them, but maybe once you've got to know them after a couple of years, then you might decide that the timing's right. So don't rush it. Don't be my driving instructor used to say to me as I was pulling up to a roundabout. We have a lot, roundabouts in America.
Oh, all over here.
Okay. We have roundabouts. And I'm pulling up to a roundabout and I'm in this little car and I've got the clutch and the accelerator. I'm getting ready to pull out and this lorry's coming by, or in your world, they're coming from the other side, but from our world, they're coming this way. And he'd say, Simon, don't be in a rush to fail. As in, don't pull out too early and cause a problem. So don't be in a rush to fail. I think that's really important in closing. Don't be in a rush to lose the deal. Wait for the right time.
Let me ask you this. What is the most common questions you get from your coaching clients about closing the sale? Because what I seem to get a lot is, well, Christine, what's the best way to close?
Yes.
Well, it depends on every sales situation. Would you agree with that? Yeah,
they want the magic, they want the magic wand. What is that one closing sentence? And you know what, really, it's less about the exact wording. It's about, if you've gone on a journey with the prospect and they want the deal to go through as much as you want it to go through because you've identified a problem that they have and they want that problem solved, then it shouldn't be a battle at the end. And it shouldn't be left to the end anyway. You should know quite early on in that process that you both want it to happen. Now, there might be bumps in the road. There might be reasons why they don't end up buying from you. But if they don't really want it and you're forcing it, then it's going to be a very difficult situation to be in. But everyone wants that one sentence. And I Googled, actually, before we came on, I Googled in Amazon, in books, sales closing. I'll just put that term in, 30,000 plus books on sales closing. And I suspect that 29,900 of them make closing sound really complicated, and it shouldn't be. There are lots of different types of closing, like the assumptive close and the direct close. Actually, just say to them at the right time, would you like us to go ahead, or something like that. It doesn't have to be a complicated sentence of some wordplay. We're not trying to trick them into saying yes. We're trying to help them solve a problem.
That's exactly right. And what I always talk about is, Simon, you're helping them make the best decision for their business. That's really your primary role. You're not there to sell. Yes, you're there to close the deal, but primarily you're there to help them make decisions and maybe discover other problems that they weren't aware of. So if you go into the process with the mindset of you're there to help them, you're there to uncover their problems, maybe deeper than what they are, and you're there to help solve the problems. If you go into any kind of prospecting meeting and you know the competition is just waiting in the other room, waiting for you to leave. Think of it this way. What solution, what unique way can you bring to the table to help them solve their problem? And don't worry about the competition.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in insurance sales, at one time I was an insurance agent. That's a very transactional business. You know, you sell life insurance. When you meet with them, usually you close at the table when you're there meeting with them. So are they really buying life insurance? No, what they're buying is whatever they're trying to protect.
Yeah.
And you have to align yourself with what's important with the buyer and stop trying to push your product on them. If you align with what their vision is and you help them form a better vision, then you'll end up, your closings will be so much easier.
Absolutely. A client of mine just a couple of days ago was telling me about this new piece of software that they're selling to a particular client. My first question was, what problem are they trying to solve? And that's the key thing. Understand that problem they're trying to solve. And that's what you do. You know, there's a saying here in the UK, it might be in America as well. People don't buy a drill because they want a hole. Sorry, they want because they want to drill. They want to drill because they want a hole. They got that the wrong way around. Yeah, so they don't want to drill because they want to drill. They want to drill because they want a hole. And yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. You know, they don't buy a piece of software because they like the software, or they don't. You know, there is a reason behind it. There is a problem. There is a need. Either there's a problem they're trying to move away from, or there's a result they're trying to move towards. And that's what we're there to help them do.
Now, there is another kind of like beware, you know, I'll go back to when I was a life insurance saleswoman. This can really trip up salespeople if they do this. It's that old assumption thing again. You assume that because this person needs life insurance because they have small children, and what if the dad dies? Then every family you sit in front of that has small children must want life insurance for the very same reason.
Yeah.
And you build your sale around those assumptions when it may not be that at all. You don't know. That's why, as we've said before, you got to ask the right questions, and you have to become a partner with, whether it's a transactional sale or a long sales cycle, you have to be a partner with them.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to be the expert. That's another thing, Simon, that I get pushback with coaching clients is, well, I don't feel like an expert. Well, does that mean you have to know every freaking thing about life insurance? No, but it does mean that you need to know everything you need to know about the life insurance product that you're selling, or the group benefits product that you're selling, or that drill that you're selling. And the buyer relies on you to help guide them, to help them see where the issues and problems are.
Yeah, absolutely. They've, if you think about the sort of 6 reasons that somebody won't buy from you, one of those is trust. And the way to erode trust is to not have that level of credibility. If you don't know, you don't have to know all the answers, but you need to know enough of the answers to be credible. You know, it's, if you are new to selling or new to that particular role, you might not know every answer, and you might have to go back to the office and speak to a technical person and find out the answer. That's fine, but you've got to know enough to be credible. Enough about what you sell, but enough about the problems you solve as well.
So what are some of the issues that you hear from your coaching clients about closing the deal?
Well, some of the mistakes they make is, and I see this one a lot when like yourself, when I'm listening in on phone calls or observing it in the real world. is they rush the close, they change pace, they change tone, they act differently when they get to the point of closing. I have seen this so many times. So they're having a lovely conversation with somebody, it's going well, and all of a sudden they're thinking, oh, I need to close, and they get anxious and anxious, and then suddenly they become somebody else. So that's an issue. And also selling beyond the close as well is another term that we use. So I like to use the power of silence. So at some point when I close, I will ask my closing question. Let's say simply, would you like to go ahead? Very good. And then stop talking and leave it with them to answer the question. And after 10 seconds feels like a minute, 20 seconds feels like 5 minutes. But as much as that is building up inside you, it's building up in them even more. So they let them answer it. But what you shouldn't do is think, then start talking again. Start talking about the features and benefits. So don't sell beyond the close. Get to the point, ask the question, be quiet. But I think that the biggest issue I come across with my own clients is the lack of qualifying. Because you can't close if they're not qualified. If you're not talking to the right person, a non-decision maker can only say no. They can't say yes. So are you talking to the right person? Do they have a problem you can fix? Do they want to fix it? Do you understand the timescales? Do you understand who else is involved in the buying process? Once you understand all of that stuff, then the closing bit's easy. But the closing is hard when you haven't put in the groundwork.
That's so true. It reminds me of one other story, Simon, if you'll indulge me for a minute. When I first started selling life insurance years ago, my boss pulled me into the office, and because I was new with the company, new selling a product, and he asked me a question I have never forgotten, and it still stumps me to this day because I do hear this from my coaching clients. And he said to me, Christine, do you have a problem asking for the check? And I went, what? And he said, do you have a problem asking for the check? And I said, no, when you buy something, you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But I hear this, not regularly, but enough, from salespeople saying, well, I don't know how to talk about the money piece. I don't know how to talk about, it just feels uncomfortable. Shouldn't they just automatically give me the money? No, you have to tell them your process. Yeah. And if you're going to close the deal and they have an agreement or a contract to sign that requires money, yes, they have to pay for the product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people have to become more comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And it might be that you feel uncomfortable asking for the money. I've had a client. I won't say what sector they're in, but they charge a certain amount per hour for their services, and it was quite a lot of money per hour. But their staff really had an issue telling people that price. So when someone said, "Oh, how much are your services?" and they'd say, "Well, it's £250 an hour," because they didn't feel comfortable, they didn't believe the price themselves. Therefore, the buyer could see that they didn't. It just didn't work out. So they had to train themselves to feel comfortable acting like it was just, that was just the standard price. It was quite a difficult mindset for them to overcome in that situation.
And the mindset behind that, honestly, Simon, and this is what I've told my coaching clients, is you wouldn't pay that amount for that product.
Yeah.
So you assume because you wouldn't do it, then everybody else feels and thinks the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how many people fall into that trap. Yeah, yeah. I see it more often when someone's trying to quote an hourly rate or a day rate. It's less obvious when you're selling a solution because it's all tied up. But when it's an hourly rate, they think, well, their hourly rate is this amount. the hourly rate for for whatever this is here, and they think, well, hang on, that would take me a week to earn that amount of money, you know. So it's mindset. But you know, it's so much of sales is mindset. You know, mindset and technique and your daily habits, and they're the three things that make it all up. So
yeah, I mean, isn't the statistic, if I remember right, it's 90% mindset and 10% skill?
it wouldn't surprise me, because it's those self-limiting beliefs we put in. So many people, you know, I was coaching someone last week in how to do follow-ups. And again, you know, it was very much about the self-limiting belief. You know, it's not wanting to pester people, not wanting to interrupt people. You know, or if they're interested, they'll get back to me. That kind of thing. It was we overcame it. You know, and we've got the next our own follow-up session on tomorrow, I think. But it's mindset is so much. Yeah.
You know what, Simon? We need to do a video on mindset.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We'll do it next time. Yeah.
We should do it next time.
Yeah, you're the expert in mindset, aren't you? That's your thing. So yeah,
that's my thing. Yeah, I love mindset.
Okay.
Well, the real truth of it is, if you don't have a closing mindset, you're not going to close.
Yeah.
You have to have a selling mindset if you want to be successful. One of my beliefs is, you know, if all it took to be successful is a sales process, then everybody that followed the sales process would be successful. But we know that's not true. So I believe in developing the whole salesperson, not just give them a selling process. So we'll do that for next time.
Yeah, perfect.
So we've got a few minutes left. Do you have any tidbits that you would like to share? Any others?
I would just kind of say that the key thing for closing is qualify, do test closes or trial closes throughout the process. Don't rush it, because it'll have its own momentum. Take the prospect with you. Really understand why they need to buy it, and understand when they need to buy, and use all of that when you close. Don't overly worry about the actual words in the closing. Make sure you do it, and use the power of silence. Just ask the question and wait. You know, and that's use the power of silence. I think is a big tip. Don't just blur. Don't interrupt them. Yeah.
Good coaching, Simon. Well, remember, everyone, sales is a journey, not a quick trip around the block. So Simon and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.